So slave patrols continued. Slave patrols continued until the end of the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment. Now, that's pretty important, but I'm not going to get into that right now, right? Following the Civil War, well, the 14th Amendment was actually even more important, referencing this here, but following the Civil War, during Reconstruction, slave patrols were replaced by militia-style groups who were empowered to control and deny access to equal rights to freed slaves. See, so the slave patrols got modernized, almost like you see today, but not quite. They got upgraded to militia-style forces. So at first, the slave patrol was just some chosen white men that went around with rifles and 38 longs, 45 longs, revolvers, and whips, and whatever else, dogs, those hound dogs. They used to have those hound dogs. That's why you see a lot of cops today that have canine patrol. That all comes from searching out for them niggas in the night back during the slave patrol. See, all it has done is evolved. So you have to understand what's going on here. Now, I want you all to pay very close attention to what I'm saying. It says they relentlessly and systematically enforced black codes, strict local and state laws that regulated and restricted access to labor, wages, voting rights, and general freedoms for formerly enslaved people. So, you're hearing this, right? I want to reread this stuff. Now, I want to talk about a continuing bias, okay? The criminal justice system is heavily impacted by the bias of police mentality and outdated judicial systems precedents. The system is largely driven by racial disparities, and the black community continues to be a target. The black community continues to be a target. The results are brutal and long-lasting. The legacy and effects of biased policing are far-reaching. The U.S. is home to the world's largest prison population. The largest prison population is right here in the United States of America, and the highest per capita incarceration rate. As of May 2020, there were 655 people incarcerated per 100,000. Prison patrol and probation operations cost U.S. taxpayers $81 billion. The U.S. taxpayers pay $81 billion a year to keep niggas in jail. Now, there's white people in jail. There's a lot of Hispanics in jail. There's even some Arabs in jail. Hell, right? But we all know that so-called African Americans are imprisoned more than anybody else. This is systematic. Now, what I want you all to understand is, if you go back and do some research on Roman slavery, Grecian slavery, Babylonian slavery, go all the way back to the Egyptian slavery, you'll see that the slavery that was legalized in 1619, the Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner slavery, you can see that when you trace it back, that all the slaveries used the same systematic circumstances and the same cruelties, the same torture cruelties. Okay? So this is something that you all need to understand, right? So you can't, so when you turn, now, listen to what I'm about to say to you all. I want you all to just have a comprehension on what's going on here. Now, if you're a civilian, if you're a civilian, I'm not saying that you are to not call the police. I don't care if you're a grown man. If you're a civilian, right? Because people want peace, right? I already know that I'm not going to get peace. I teach the word of Elohim, and I teach it truthfully. And I don't care what anybody thinks, or I don't care how anybody feels. So even if I go and speak to somebody one-on-one, and I get an opportunity to save one soul, that's major to me, right? And so I'm going to give this word of Elohim. I'm going to give it individually to people, face to face, and I'm also going to give it on my platform until they shut it down. So what you have to understand is those apostles and prophets of Christ, we can never be civilians. We can never be pedestrians. We will always be sought out by all types of people, not only by the general public, street niggas, and just people, even some people that ain't street niggas, right? Not only will we be sought out by the oppressor, but as the word becomes stronger and stronger, some of us already have elitists looking at us. Do you know how dangerous it is to have an elitist looking at your messages, paying attention to your ministry? Do you have any idea? You got people out here, and I want you all to understand something. Matter of fact, we don't have to go into that right now. So, let me dive into another situation here. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28. Deuteronomy chapter 28. And we're going to start at verse 58. Okay? This is not a very long message. I got a surprise for y'all this weekend. I'm going to try to bring more than one message this weekend. Right? I'm almost finished a very good message that I've been wanting to deliver to you all for a while. Even though I've been spending more time with my aunt, I've been, at least, it's allowed me to have some peace and study the word. And there's one message that I've been longing to bring you all that I'm almost finished. It's going to be a little lengthy, but damn is it going to be informative, and damn is it going to be a good message. Deuteronomy chapter 28, and we're going to go to verse 58. And it says, if you do not carefully observe all the words of this law, if you do not carefully observe all the words of this Torah that are written in the scroll, that you may fear the glorious and awesome name of Yahuwah, thy or your Elohim. Now, I want you black people to understand something. The Bible is speaking to you. When he said, fear the glorious name of your or thy, T as in Tom, H-Y, thy is the same thing as your. They're interchangeable. What I want you to understand there is that this is one verse where that word thy in the King James and in the New King James is changed over, is translated over to your. I want you to understand something very significant about that word. It's capitalized. It's capitalized in the King James Version, and it's capitalized in the New King James Version. Why is it capitalized? Because Christ wants you black people to know that he is your God. He's your Elohim. That's why it's capitalized there. But many of you play the harlot, and many of you play the prostitute, and many of you won't bend. But there will come a day where you will bend, you will break. I promise you. I told you all, Christ broke me about 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, he broke me, which is the reason why that nothing can break me today. But many people out there are playing games. You're playing games. Then Yahuwah will bring upon you and your descendants extraordinary plagues, great and prolonged plagues, and serious and prolonged sicknesses. Moreover, he will bring back on you all the diseases of Egypt. So, I want to skip a few of this here. It says here, let's go to verse 62. It says here, you, black people, shall be left in few number, whereas you were as the stars of heaven in multitude, because you would not obey the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim. So, there are almost 400 million people here in America. Out of that 400 million, only roughly, give or take, about 14 million people are Israelites. Now, I would like to say that all 14 million were so-called African Americans, but that's not true, because that's also considering a lot of people here in America from the Caribbean diaspora, which would mean that they're all not of the tribe of Judah, So you Negroes that wear your pants down and sing the gangster rap, what you need to understand is this, that the entire 14 million of us that are over here aren't all of the tribe of Judah, but some of them. Now, because it gets tricky, which is why Paul said, do not stress yourself with genealogies. Paul was a very intelligent man, and he didn't want many of us to stretch our brain and stress our brain with trying to figure out who's from what tribe. Now, in many cases, some cases, you can simply tell, like, I know I'm from the tribe of Judah, right? But in some cases, it's kind of tricky, because you can have someone from so-called Jamaica, and they could be either of the tribe of Benjamin, or they can be of the tribe of Judah. It's tricky. So, because there are many Jamaicans, so-called Haitians, so-called Dominicans, that when you look at them, you swear you're looking at a so-called African American born and raised in the ghetto. And then when they speak and they open their mouth, you're like, what? And you hear the dialect, then it's clear that they're either their parents are from the Caribbean diaspora, or they might be directly from the Caribbean diaspora. So let's not get caught up in genealogies. We really shouldn't. But only 14 million black people over here in America. The other 360, 70 something million people are of the other nations. Majority Caucasian, but you have Arabs and you have Chinaman and you have Japanese man. Everybody can come over to America and do what they want to do. Now you got some dumb niggas that live over there in Czechoslovakia and China. And now I know some of you niggas in China are over there for military purposes. Well, okay. But if you was a dumb nigga that live in Russia, you's a dumb nigga and deserve whatever happens to you. Okay? So we're scattered So we're small in number, scattered among the peoples of the world. Now, ultimately, we outweigh the rest of the nations if we were all in one place. But because we got 14 million niggas here, some odd million niggas in Canada, some odd million niggas in Australia, some odd million niggas in Europe, some odd million niggas in the Caribbean diaspora, some odd million niggas in Japan. Well, excuse me, we don't have that many million niggas in Japan, but maybe a couple thousand. Probably got a couple, maybe not even a couple thousand in Japan, maybe a couple hundred. You got about 1,000, 2,000 niggas in China, right? Many of them, some of them are over there for military reasons, but a lot of niggas over there working in China, right? So you have to understand that we're scattered amongst the four quarters of the planet. And because we're separated and we're scattered wherever we're at, actually, when you think about it, well, no. So whether or not right now we're the minority or the majority, I'm not going to call that shot, because China's worth about 3 billion and India's worth about 1.5 billion. So that's 4.5 billion. So China and India together are the majority of the world's population. So we're probably still the minority in comparison to China or India. But nonetheless, there's still a lot of us. And then you have to look at the continent of Africa. So I don't know those numbers, of course, for face value. But I want you all to understand what's going on here. So it's going to say here, and it shall be, just as Yahuwah rejoiced over you to do good and multiply you, so Yahuwah shall rejoice over to destroy you and to bring you to nothing, and you shall be plucked from off the land which you go to possess. So see, these are the curses. Many people don't understand what the generational curses really are. The generational curses are simply because, it's not because we're black people. It's because we're the children of God. It's a bloodline thing. It's not a color thing. And I've told you all over that over and over and over again. But if many of you all think that the scriptures are foolish and you don't believe the scriptures, then how could you understand? So it's saying here that then Yahuwah will scatter you among all peoples from one end of the earth, one end of the earth to the other, and there you shall serve other gods, which neither you nor your fathers have known, wood and stone. Wood and stone meaning idols, false idols, or wood and trees, right? That make statues, and you make objects with them, and you all serve them, right? And among those nations, so us Negroes over here in America, we are among the Caucasian nation in majority, right? Among those nations you shall find no rest, nor shall the sole of your foot have a resting place. But there Yahuwah will give you trembling heart, failing eyes, and anguish of soul. Your life shall hang in doubt before you. You shall fear day and night, and have no assurance of your life. So, many of you need to understand that the police force is really, all in all, it's not to help us as a people. They're not our friends. Jail and prison is not a type of reform. The laws, statutes, and commandments are a reform. Now, it gets worse in other states. Pennsylvania, however, is a very racist state, but Philadelphia City, and many places in Philadelphia for that matter, are not as bad as some places in Georgia, some places in the other states, right? In some of these states, modern day lynchings are going on, right? So blatant lynchings, right? And they're lying, and then they're lying and saying that these niggas hung themselves or it was suicide. And they're sweeping it under the rug, right? So you have to understand what's going on here, right? Those were probably Ku Klux Klanmen who were police officers by day and Ku Klux Klanmen at night, right? But what I want you to understand here is what it said right here. It says, you shall hang in doubt. Your life shall hang in doubt. You shall fear day and night and have no assurance of your life. See, it's not quite at that point right now. But many of you black people, these things are going to come, and these things are going to come swiftly. They're swiftly ushering in right now. Okay? They're swiftly ushering in right now. Now, the Philadelphia Police Department is a pretty solid police department. Right now, there's actually righteousness at the helm of the Philadelphia Police Department. There was an attempt to put unrighteousness at the helm of the Philadelphia Police Department. There was this racist woman that they had put at the helm, and they found out she was racist. And so funny that during that short period of time that she was police chief, police officers was running down on people, pulling people over for bullshit. Bullshit. Now, I don't want to jump the gun on this, but for some reason, I believe that these police officers have an EMT, the EMT device, a device that they can actually point at one of your lights and knock one of your lights out and malfunction one of your lights. The EMT device is a device that can make electrical components malfunction. Now, oh, you crazy, OG. I know, and I'm not saying that with any authority, but I'm trying to tell you, I've been pulled over a good number of times, and there are some cases where I'm almost certain that my light was perfectly good, with nothing bad with my light at all. In one case, with a Grand Marquis that I used to have, all the lights were replaced, and all of a sudden, I get pulled over because my light was out. Ironically, that light started working again. EMTs temporarily knock out electrical devices. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I could be dead wrong. Let me repeat. I could be dead wrong. And people, you all think I'm crazy anyway. But I have reason to at least believe that that's possible. Okay? And if the police force I don't think that the police force has those devices. I don't think the police force itself allows such a thing, but I believe that there are certain police officers that have them. And yes, all the police officers that pulled me over for broken lights were Caucasian. Now, I ran into some good Caucasian police officers as well. So I'm not going to say good, but they were easygoing. So what I want you all to understand here is that you all need to think twice now. If, like I said, if you're a woman or a child, your life is in danger, then certainly the police, you can call the police and you can get help, right? You can get protection, whatever you want to call it. Even if when you're one of these grown-ass men out here, right? Because you may be a peaceful man. I mean, we're all peaceful to an extent, right? But many of us have a lion in us as well, right? But for the most part, you want to go about your day at ease. You want to go about your day in peace. So there are men out here that, they live their life like that. And sure, they can call the police if they want to, right? As for myself, I already know what I'm getting myself into. When I pick up that Bible and when I just the way that I'm prepared to go about my life, I already know that I'm not a civilian, that I'm not a pedestrian. So therefore, I have to accept whatever comes my way. I can't get the police involved in anything because this is the life that I chose. You understand what I'm saying? So, if you are somebody for the community or somebody, now, some of you all, you work with the police, and, I just don't have a comment on that, right? Just seriously, not even trying to be sarcastic. I just don't have a comment on it. One thing that many of you need to do is make sure that you put food on the table for your family. That's one thing that many of you need to do. Okay? Now, some of you are in connection with the Philadelphia Police Department, or whatever the case. Some of you in connection with NYPD, Los Angeles Police, whatever you do, right? Just know that if you're going to do it with honor. Don't be dishonorable about it, okay? Don't act one way, and if it's your job, it's your job, right? But we have to understand. But the notion of this message, right, is do understand the purpose of the police. And if you are a gangster out there, speaking to any of you gangsters, right? If you're a gangster, then do understand that when you go and you commit a crime with another so-called gangster, do understand that you are to be accountable for that crime. If John stabs Brian, right? If John stabs Brian, right, because John and Brian have a problem, right? Brian is not supposed to go to the police and say that John stabbed him. Now, if Tamika or Christy tells the police that John stabbed Brian, that's a different story, because Tamika and Christy are pedestrians. They're civilians. They're not accountable for anything, and they may fear for their life. So Tamika and Christy are going to go and tell the slave patrol that John stabbed Brian, and they're afraid for their life that John might come back and stab them too. That's perfectly honorable on the behalf of Tamika and Christy. But if Brian tells the slave patrol that he got stabbed by by John, and he's in the midst of a scenario with John, then that's not noble. You understand what I'm saying? So all I'm saying is, for many of you out here that you talk the gun in your mouth talk, you talk all of these things, all of this about this raps and all of this, right? And whatever you go and you involve yourself in illegally, and if you have counterparts with you, do understand that it's your responsibility and your accountability to deal with your part of the crucifixion. You can't say, well, hey, I'm not a part of the crucifixion. Get Barnabas and get Paul, but I ain't had nothing to do with it. Or guess what, man? It was Paul and Barnabas that did it, not me. Then that's cowardly. So it's a matter of just being a good citizen. And I'm not talking about a citizen of the United States or a citizen of your neighborhood. I'm talking about being a good citizen to your people as an Israelite and following the laws and the statutes and commandments of Christ. And Christ definitely wants everybody to be accountable for their own actions. Okay? So the reform is not jail. So me personally, and like I said, now, I don't want you all to misconstrue this message. If you see a little girl get gunned down or something like that, man, you know, that person should definitely go to jail. But see, you have to understand something, right? The laws, statutes, and commandments were for us to police ourselves. When a nigga got out of line or a negroette got out of line, they were dealt with according to the law of Moses. But we can't police ourselves today. If we police ourselves today, a lot of people, a lot of Negroes would go missing. Not only that, it would be completely out of control. Plus, you have to understand that there's always a nigga that's not wanting to be in order. So it's going to bring chaos. Now, you have to understand, we're simply not in a good state without the laws, statutes, and commandments. If we, with the police, we're in bad shape, and without the police, we'd be in bad shape. Because we're not under, us as a nation, are not under the commandments of God. We're not under the commandments of Christ. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? So, just be mindful that when you're dealing with one another out here, it's not necessarily, do not necessarily think that it's reform to, now, I mean, if you catch a murder or whatever, it's a sticky situation, right? Because, see, I just want to be truthful. Hold on, let me come right back.